welcome to today's members session. We'll start off a slightly bit different than the usual times because we do have participants who are not as familiar working with Vicky and me. So we would first of all like to introduce ourselves very shortly because we do have participants from what I recall the US, students as well as teachers, which we are very happy about and very glad. So welcome. Some of the other faces that you see around the table, the virtual table, are much more familiar to this concept. So we'll just share a couple of words on how we do this and why we do this and what it actually is. So I'm Svenja. I'm originally from Germany. I work for Penn Worldwide, the worldwide practice enterprise network. I'm mostly responsible for the international development and the marketing. And Vicky?
My name is Victoria, or Vicky. I'm originally from the Czech Republic, so I'm currently speaking to you from Prague. And I also work at Penn Worldwide, I think since 2018. And I'm mainly responsible for our different events and for the member engagement. And also me and Svenja take care of all of these different kinds of projects together.
Yes, and there was this thing called the pandemic some time ago, which also led us to this nice concept that every other month or so, we set up a very fixed format, which means that there is usually 30 minutes of a presentation. We try to make it as interactive as possible, plus about 15 minutes of a Q&A. And since this doesn't make an hour yet, we have 15 minutes of buffer at the beginning or at the end, depending on how the discussion goes. So it would be fantastic if you've got questions to either just shoot them in the chat or just ask them afterwards. We're always much more excited even when people interact and let us know what you think, because that's also for us mostly exciting. And this time, this is not the first, but I think the second or third time that actually Vicky and I hold a session. Usually it's partners from around the table. I see familiar faces who've done that already, or external speakers just to share knowledge, to introduce new tools, skill sets, etc. So this is also why we're recording it, because people sometimes cannot participate, and this will be shared internally in our web application as a recording. So as Vicky already said, yeah, we will be recording this and we'll take some nice screenshots. We'll make sure that everybody looks nice, which we might use for dissemination afterwards. And a special welcome and thank you for joining us, especially for our consortium members from Belgium, Austria, Spain, and Lithuania. So just a nice hi, and it's nice to see you again. We just saw each other luckily in beautiful Vienna about 2 weeks ago now. So today's member session is actually about female empowerment and soft skills development using online mini courses. It's based out of the outcomes of the FEMPOWER, Female Empowerment Leaders of the Future project. But what we really look at is youth empowerment. I would say that's really our main goal in this. It's a European funded project, but we'll also continue working on this because the tools, or the digital tools and the website that you'll see in a bit, actually is something that we want to continue even after the project lifetime. So any feedback from your side, especially at the end and when you've looked around, is very much welcome, will help us. Did I forget anything, Vicky?
No, just a big shout out to the partners that we worked with, because this is a result of our collaboration. It's not us presenting what we did, but it's really us kind of summarizing what we did together with our wonderful partners from the mentioned countries. And it was a really nice collaboration, and it still continues to be. So we're just really happy to see them on here today as well. And of course, we'll get them to pitch in as well and join our discussion round as well, if they'd like to, that is.
Okay, and then I think the first thing that we want to do is actually hear something from you. So I'll hand over to Vicky, stop sharing, and
I will share my screen, and I would like to ask you to join our Slido. You can just scan the QR code. Maybe I'll stop it still so you can have the big QR code on there, or you can just go to slido.com and type in FEMPOWER. So if you could just join us there, that would be lovely. And we always try to do an icebreaker to kind of dissolve the tension a bit and maybe take the pressure away from us as well, because we don't want this to be like a lecture type of format. And we really want to ask you the first question, which is, what are the 3 things that you think of when hearing empowerment? a very general, broad one. There are no right and wrong answers, and we just wanted to get an idea of the keywords that come to your mind, or the elements that come to your mind when you hear the word empowerment in general. So we will give you a couple of seconds, minutes to think about this. Doesn't have to be really thought through. It's more like intuitive. It can also be just one or two things if you just come up with one right away. So there's no pressure to fulfill the number even. So we have someone already writing power, strength, personal growth. So we have the word power in the empowerment. So that definitely makes sense. We see bravery, strength, and growth. I like that someone actually put an emoji in there. That's kind of refreshing. We see voice, knowledge, skills, enhancement, and strengthening. So we see a lot of the growth and the different keywords that are actually quite similar. So a lot of strength, a lot of power, a lot of personal growth, voice, togetherness, encouragement. So some really nice outcomes, that new equipments, innovation, new skills, positive thinking. I really like the direction this is taking. So this already creates a nice little atmosphere for us to continue with our presentation and to keep these words in our minds as we go throughout the presentation. So I'll stop sharing now, and I'll still leave it open if you want to pitch in later on as well before we get to the next question. So thank you for joining that.
Yeah, and I'll go back to presenting what we will be looking at today. So just a brief overview, we will look at the why, the what, the how, and then we want to hear from you. So the question was, why did we actually create such an online tool to train soft skills and to empower youth? And Vicky will provide some valuable insights on the surveys and the research that has been done in the first phase of the project and how we actually got to what has been developed. And we'll look into the tool, we'll go onto the website, show you around, and introduce you to the FEMPOWER mini courses. We'll get back to that in a second. And of course, we'll also give some hints on how to use it, because I know around the table, we've got representatives from central offices, so national practice enterprise offices. We do have teachers, trainers present, as well as trainees and students. So we do have basically all our target groups around the table. And then, of course, we would like to hear from you, get some feedback and some insights.
Okay, so let's go to the why. I don't want to spend too much time on this, although we could basically spend the whole session just on the why and the survey outcomes and the statistics and the research analysis that we did. Our initial thought when we wrote the project was we thought we would do something like courses focused on salary negotiation and support with that. For example, helping how to apply for a job and not see it as a fixed thing, because we know, according to the studies, very often women, for example, are very likely to not even apply for certain positions where they feel like they don't fulfill 150% of the criteria, which is hardly ever the case. So we have this idea in our heads. But once you start the project, you see that the reality is a bit different. So what we actually tried to do in the first stage was to do an analysis of the practice enterprise activities that are existing in our network. So are there any female leadership activities or initiatives in our network? Is there any diversity and inclusion initiatives that are there? And our finding, and I must say this was 2 years back, so the reality has changed since then, was that these were mainly missing in our practice enterprise networks. We saw some really cool initiatives here and there in respective practice enterprises, but there were not any dominant initiatives that we could draw from. We know there were some good practices. For example, in the US, there is the Winning Women Conference. We know that as the time went on, Italy, for example, focused on the gender equality certification. We know that a lot of networks and countries now are increasingly focusing on that. We know that in Slovakia, the focus is on responsible practice enterprise. But at the time when we did the original research in practice enterprise networks, there was not a lot there. We saw that there was definite interest in, these leadership and empowerment activities and trainings. So we knew this was a good direction, but there was not that much out there. When we looked into real businesses and what kind of is out there, we know that there are a lot of regulations, a lot of initiatives, a lot of equality regulations, quota, etc. However, what we found very often in the different countries that we looked at is the implementation and the actual, how it's being implied and applied in the everyday. What we do believe, and I believe that is kind of the part of the practice enterprise concept, is that PE should really mirror real world practices. By the way, for our US colleagues, maybe practice enterprise is the equivalent to virtual enterprise in the US. So just to get the terminology the same. So we thought, okay, maybe we can draw on some of these activities and initiatives and bring them more into the practice enterprise concept as well. I don't want to go really deeply into the research and analysis, but if you're interested in some of the findings that we had, some of the good best practices from the different countries, or some best practices from some partner networks, you can check out the research analysis, which is also on the FEMPOWER website, which we will share with you. The second part that we looked at was surveys. So we did surveys with trainees, with students. We did surveys with trainers, teachers, and we also did a couple with business stakeholders. We asked various questions, and we don't have time, unfortunately, to go into all of them, but there were some interesting highlights and interesting statistics coming out of it. We asked practice enterprise trainers. We had 128, which we asked different questions, and we asked, in case of job vacancies at your practice enterprise, do you pay attention to gender equality and inclusion? So there were some interesting results. Basically, except Austria, we saw that the large majority of practice enterprises in the partner countries and the trainers said that they do not pay attention to that. Worldwide, I would say the number was boosted up quite a bit because we had large numbers of trainers in Canada saying that they pay attention to this. So I think that has to be taken into account. The spread of the worldwide respondents was a bit uneven. Second part, which I would just quickly like to highlight, is that we asked a couple of business stakeholders in various sized enterprises, and we asked if there are any internal procedures to deal with work-based discrimination. And a very interesting finding was that it's not clear. A lot of them said no, some of them were not even aware. And that was also the case, for example, for different equality plans, for different trainings, that very often the employees themselves are not even aware if these are in place. And some of them simply said no. And then we had also a number which said yes. So there was not a very clear and yes stated answer that many of these would have these procedures to deal with work-based discrimination. And next slide. Next slide, and maybe our most important one, because we wanted to ask trainees what they think about leadership training, what they think are the leadership skills that are important to them, because we really wanted to make it focused on them and do mini courses that would correspond with something that they think they need to focus on, they want to focus on, and that they're interested in. Very good feedback for us was that on average, 82% trainees consider having acquired leadership skills in practice enterprise. And 80% said that they feel ready to take on a leadership position in the practice enterprise. We had 153 trainees, and I would say the vast majority were female trainees that we had as respondents. We asked them to identify the most important leadership skills which we could further help them along with. And they mentioned the top 5 that we then applied for our mini courses and that we will go into. So most of them mentioned confidence building, decision making, people management. We also had team building, and we had critical thinking. So confidence building, definitely important. We found that out that it is relevant also for things when we talk about applying for a job, being confident to apply, for taking on leadership responsibilities, for taking on new tasks. Decision-making, critical thinking, people management, and team building was a very important one as well. So this is kind of where we started basing our mini courses on.
Yes. So what did we make out of the research and the analysis? What we looked at is we need a tool that's digital, because we're living in a world that is more than ever digitalized and needs to be very flexible. So anything that's just working on print was definitely not a go-to option for us. So what we created is a website, and we incorporated all the digital tools into the website. So all the structures, all the research that Vicky was talking about is on the website, sometimes even as a download function. And sometimes you cannot just do the course actually online on the website interactively. The two things that are the most important ones for us and that we want to look into more detail today is, one, the structure for trainers, for teachers, and B, the course for the trainees, for students, or let's say for everybody, because I think we all went through them ourselves and found them quite interesting. And the courses, there is 5 mini courses, and there is per mini course 1 skill focus. So we really, for example, we'll be looking at team building today a bit more, and that is then the one that we focus on entirely. And this is the skills that Vicky just mentioned were chosen by the trainees as their desired skill that is most important to be trained. Then the mini course will be lasting for more or less 20 minutes. We did see when we checked that afterwards that some might be a bit more extensive than others, but that's not an issue because it's a very flexible tool. So there is no clear structure in terms of one has to start with one skill and with the last skill, or there's no clear time frame that it has to be done within. So it doesn't really matter where you're sitting, where people are located. It's available online, it's available digitally. So whether you've got your phone or your laptop or your any kind of mobile device, you just need Wi-Fi connection with a bit of electricity, and in my case today, a working laptop. So then you can actually access it. You can do it whenever you want to do it. There's no time constraint during the day, and there's also no issues to just stop the mini course and continue later. And this is very flexible and very good for trainers as well, because we know that within the P time frame, sometimes there's just limited time and place to actually incorporate additional material on empowerment. And shall we go to the next slide, Vicky, or?
Yes, to have little breaks between, you know, not to have to listen to us the whole time how we're talking. So let's have another Slido, this time especially directed at, I'm going to stop your recording. No, sorry, not the recording, the screen share. This time directed especially at central offices and at trainers, because we want to ask in which elements of the practice enterprises, or in which phase or section or part of the practice enterprise should gender equality, diversity, and inclusion be included. So what we mean is, for example, in which department, which processes of the practice enterprise, which phase. If you have any specific recommendations or thoughts or ideas of when and where that should be implemented, or if you say this is something that we should mirror in all the elements of the practice enterprise, we would be really interested to hear what you think. So which department, which process, where and when is the correct place to do that. I'll give a couple of minutes. I like it. All departments, yes. So for example, having an equality plan would be mirrored, you know, in kind of everything that you do, kind of the way that you work, the all and human resources. We agree. Human resources, yes, all and human resources. HR department, all and HR, okay. Finance. So I guess the remuneration is what we're alluding to. Okay, so we see most people mentioning actually it should be kind of visible everywhere, really. And HR department naturally makes sense to mention as one of the important parts. Okay, I'm gonna stop the share and okay. It's good to wait. Then you see the ones that are answered by the same people, or by the most people actually, you see in big lettering. So all departments is kind of the consensus of the people so far who have contributed. So I think that's for us going in a very good and positive direction, that it's not just seen as kind of the part or work for one part of the practice enterprise, but kind of overall. I'm going to stop the share, but I'm still going to keep it open. So please feel free to add your ideas and points on there as well. And we can continue with the actual mini courses themselves.
Yeah, so the link that Vicky shared in the chat, you feel free to click on it already, but we'll go through the most important parts here, but keep it for later. We'll also send out a follow-up email with all the links and the presentation as PDF. And for those using the web app, especially our central offices, national offices, it will, of course, be available on the web app as well. So this is just an overview of the website. We don't want to go into everything. You can learn more about our partners, about the reason why, everything basically in more detail of what we talked about as an intro, about the progress. And there you can also find some of the downloads, like the research and the analysis, the reports that Vicky was mentioning and highlighting a few key parts on. But the one part that we want to look at in more detail is, of course, the mini course. And as I mentioned beforehand, we chose 5 different skills. So team building, decision making, self-esteem, self-confidence, critical thinking, and people management, which really goes into the HR direction as well. And these are, again, the skills that were chosen as the key important ones by the surveyed trainees. And then when you look further, there is the separation between the mini course itself, which is mostly looking at participants, trainees, learners, students, as well as the structure for the trainers. We'll just go into the mini course structure for the trainers. So this is more looking at the more or less pedagogical part. And we separate it the same way as the mini course is separated by skill. So we'll just go into the first one. It's a bit easier for Vicky and me, I think, because that's the one that we developed, but please have a look at all the other skills there as well. They're all slightly different, but following the same structure. So you can really, as a trainer, you can really go in and see the same structure, just with different ingredients. So let's have a look at the team building. The general structure looks at what learning outcomes there may be, the methods and theories, the type, so what type of content would the trainees, the students, be confronted with. We usually look at a variety, so it can be a little bit of reading, there could be quiz, there is TED-style talk videos, there is a little FAQ sometimes, and for this one, that's what we looked at. We also talk about the duration of the course, the language. Our main language stays English. However, there is the option to switch between the languages on the bottom left. And that's, of course, the languages used in the consortium. Then, of course, we also have an introduction to what actually it means to be a team player and how this can be interconnected in the classes. We do have some suggestions on how to step by step go through the mini course. And of course, also some other suggestions for trainers to look at. So, example, how can it actually be implemented in a class, whether it's a practice enterprise class or it can be any other kind of class. We give suggestions for the evaluation, for example. These can also, to make it a bit simpler, be downloaded. Then we also have suggestions on how to provide feedback, because we know with soft skills that can be a challenge sometimes, and sources for further development. And for ours, a little bit in addition, we just needed some terms to be defined in more detail, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And these are added where needed as well.
And we know that trainers do like their PDFs or even sometimes their printed version. This is why we decided to actually have downloads, because we know a lot of trainers like that. They like to check it, highlight, or just have it in the PDF. So this is kind of like a guideline for them to know what awaits them, what the learning outcomes are, how can they evaluate, how can they implement it. And here in the implementation, as Svenja mentioned, we refer back to the practice enterprise, but these courses can be used outside of the practice enterprise anytime, really.
Yeah, and then you can basically just download it. Okay, and back. And then what we want to look at more, because it's for us the most fascinating one, is actually the part for actually participating in such a mini course. And I think I'll hand over to Vicky, because you've listened to me a lot now. And let's go through what the actual mini course is.
So what we try to do is kind of do a little guide through the course. All of the courses are really nice. We encourage you to check out the different courses. You know, you can see different videos. Austria has 3 kinds of videos. You know, we have videos from Lithuania on the people management. We have a really cool Geniali type quiz from the Belgian partners on the self-confidence, and we have really cool Geniali quizzes from Spain, which is on the critical thinking. So Austria's decision making. You know, each partner took kind of care of one of the mini courses. We're showing ours because it's just easier for us as we put it together. So the team building for us, it revolves around the initial video, which is with a coach and an organizational psychologist. And she talks about the benefits of team building, why it's good. And we really try to keep it minimal as to the length. It's not longer than, I would say, 3-4 minutes, because we know that the focus span, you know, even for us is not that long. And so we really try to make it minimalist. So then we have some key terms around it. We included the important skills, the important terms that are there. These mini courses can be done on an individual basis. So each trainee, for example, I can imagine if you have 20 minutes left in a practice enterprise time, and the trainer is thinking, what should we do in those 20 minutes? This is a really good way to use that, for example, at the end or at the start of the class, where each trainee could go in and choose one of the skills that they're interested in. They don't have to do it skill by skill. They can really just go to the one that they're interested in. Then we included a little quiz where they can just check right away the answers and kind of see where they're at. But we do it in a very encouraging way. So we try to motivate and not do it this black and white style, and really focus on how we can promote team building and building a good team in the practice enterprise. We have the quiz also in all the other languages, so you'll find that. And you have different scenarios and questions there. So if someone's interested in doing a quiz in Dutch, you may. I had my challenges with some of the long Dutch words, but maybe it'll be more successful than I. And then we have the second video on our part, which is kind of a team meeting situation that is challenging. So we invite trainees to look at it and really brainstorm and see what could be done differently, what was maybe the tricky things, and imagine how they would solve such a situation. Then this is kind of a really team building activities where trainees can get together and brainstorm about it. So we also include some tips, you know, some things that they could do afterwards and continue kind of after this team building mini course. And of course, then we also can ask for the evaluation, which is at the very end. So this mini course is just an example of the mini courses that are out there. But as Svenja mentioned, and I did now as well, each mini course is very individual and different. So they're not the same format. They have some similar elements, but you can see that each partner also approached it in a different, nice way and brought a bit of their original thinking there. So that's, I think, the nice part about it. So we encourage you to just like have a look at the mini courses, especially for trainees, because there you see how it evolves and how it is brought about. And many of those have really creative elements as well, where you're supposed to decide about certain skills that you yourself have and how these relate, etc. I will pass it back to Svenja. Oh, okay. I see she's already doing one of the activities.
Now, I think the main part for us is to just give you an overview of the tools that are there today. And then, of course, as a follow-up, take a bit of time to play around. But what's really important for us is that it shouldn't be something that's stiff and set up as a must-do in this order, but can really be taken and broken apart. Even one mini course could be done task per task, like it is done with in the example for decision making, or it could be stopped at a certain point and adapted. So this is mostly a suggestion, an idea, and so that there is material that can be given to practice enterprise trainers to just hand that out. This could be, for example, then the team building one we thought of could be a great introduction to when you've got a new group of trainees, setting up a practice enterprise, doing the first team meetings. Then there is others looking at the decision making when it maybe comes to a bit later stage and having to decide as a team or on your own, and getting the power to actually say out your voice, your opinion. We had voice in the word cloud, I think, beforehand. So voice and voicing your opinion is a big part. So we really highly encourage everybody to have a look at those mini courses and play through. There's no grading in this, so you can feel free to make mistakes and play around with it. If you find any mistakes, please let us know, because then I will need to have a quick moment to correct it. And the one thing that we just wanted to highlight as well before we go into the Q&A is that how it can be used. It's a little bit of a pain and pleasure in itself because it's flexible and not static. So there's a lot of options and you can feel free to choose, but this also means you have the choice. So you could share it as a central office with your national network, which would be, of course, helping us also to collect feedback and to learn more and to improve this tool. This also means that the structure for the trainers is mostly directed at people teaching, training, working with youth. And that's something that we would like to ask you to share in, for example, newsletters or trainers trainings. If you hold a trainers training or a trainers get together, an exchange session, just let us know. Anyone, I think, of the consortium, I'm speaking on behalf without having informed them, but especially Vicky and me, we would be happy to join any kind of session, give an introduction. Of course, the mini course for participants, feel free to share it in newsletters, social media, directly with your trainees. Let us know how the feedback is and how they like it or what they would like to see improved. And of course, it can also be included in the preparation for job interviews, because we think that these skills are very valuable to be reminded of and consciously know and adapt to the situation when you actually have to go out of the more comfortable setting of the educational sector of a school, of a classroom where you know everybody, but actually decision making, team building, critical thinking, etc. It is a different story again when we apply for jobs or internships, etc. And now I think Vicky and I talked quite a bit, and I think I'll stop the screen share because then I can actually see everybody again and not just a few. And we would really like to hear what you think about the first insights that we've given to you today, and learn a bit from you of what your thoughts are, and stop talking ourselves, but hear from you.
And maybe one last thing, Svenja, sorry to jump in before we give the floor, is that out of the different roundtables and interviews which we had with different partners in different countries, we know that the situation is different based on the country, on the culture. But we see that hardly anywhere is it perfect, right? I think we had one participant who thought, oh, why are you doing this? Everything's good and we don't have a problem. I think there was only one. But then you see a lot of things that are influenced, of course, by institutional levels, by how the state supports, equality, how the social policies are established and things like that. And what we came across was a same theme for all, was that there's a need for role models. And many of the trainees have great role models in their lives. They have their family, they have some celebrities or some teachers, peers that are close to them, but not all do. And what we try to do is also in the media section to have a few interviews that are very candid and that are very, down to earth and speaking about their own experience. So this is what we try to bring across as well. So thank you to Lillian and a couple of the others that we did the interviews with, where we could share some personal stories that might seem, okay, it's a personal story, but it's actually very valuable to trainees who might not have role models available to them. So that's just one thing that I wanted to add and explain why we have those in the media section. So are there any questions, comments, anything that you'd like to share or that was maybe unclear? I know no one usually likes to start this, but if you have anything, this is kind of like a family setting, so there's nothing to be worried about and there's no right and wrong in this kind of discussion anyhow. Yes, please, Lillian.
I think it's wonderful to have materials to work with and to distribute to our practice enterprise, and it's organized and it's structured and it's well done. So it's easy to just adapt into the practice enterprise and help them and us grow inside both our network, but in the PE.
Thank you. That's very nice to hear, obviously.
This is what has been, wanted for a long time. So it's a good thing for us.
Thank you. And we don't want to stop with this. We want to kind of build on that. So we know that more and more countries are focusing on responsible practice enterprise, on, diversity and inclusion, on equality, creating equality plans. So we're thinking how to make this something international that everyone can apply and use in all the different networks, because we know some are more into this topic, more, let's say, have more capacity as well as a central office, because we know that differs central office to central office. But hopefully we can pool this knowledge and expertise and experience and get something good out of that. Thank you, Lillian. Anyone else, anything that you want to share, or if you also want to get in touch with us after the session, not to put you on the spot, of course, we're always happy to, respond to any questions afterwards. Maybe I'll also add our page from Penn Worldwide, where you see our team, so you can connect with us on LinkedIn as well and reach out to us at any time. And also if partners want to add something that we didn't maybe mention for them or that we forgot, feel free. And definitely check out the cool other mini courses, because especially the Geniali quizzes. I mean, I was thinking, oh, I need to do it myself, not for the trainees, first for myself. So we just recommend you to check them out.
Hey, Vicky, if I could add something. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Amy. So good to see you.
Thank you for inviting me. This is terrific. These courses look fantastic, very well organized, comprehensive. Love it. Couple questions. First of all, is there any kind of certificate, or how do you motivate people to complete this? I know it's pretty short, but is there something like that? And second question is about the balance of individual versus group work. Is there any kind of, teamwork involved here as you go through this?
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for being on here, first of all, and second of all, for these good questions and for the nice feedback. I think I'll tackle it together with Svenja, right? We'll kind of separate that. Good question for the certificate. That's definitely adding in my mind, okay, this is a continuation, something that we need to add on. This is not something that we included in the project itself. It was a relatively small European funded project, and we did a lot of cool stuff, given it was only, a relatively smaller consortium and budget. But I really like the certificate idea, and it would be a great way to motivate them. So I'm thinking how to implement that actually quite shortly. For now, we were thinking, okay, if it's a part of the practice enterprise and it's really, for example, a fill out activity or something like that, it would be maybe encouraged by the trainer within the practice enterprise time. But if they do it by themselves at home, for example, this would be a really good thing to have. So I agree with that. And no, we do not have it yet.
Yeah, the certification, maybe just to add on, this is specifically something that we have already to a degree inside the practice enterprise concept, not concerning necessarily these soft skills. So that's something that we're anyways looking at to rebuild. Of course, certification systems, having to look at GDPR, etc. That's like opening up a Pandora's box, it feels. But that is something that that is currently being worked on as well. So that's something that we would also share with colleagues who are working on a certification in general for PE. But I agree with Vicky that we need to look at something where maybe for people who are not familiar, not out of the network, can actually use that accordingly. And for teamwork and individual work, yes, there is both. However, we didn't focus on having 50-50% because we felt that really depends on the skill set as well. So for example, for the team building one, we did have some part. The first part is mostly individual work, could be done as a team, but individual work. And the second part really looks at, hey, let's discuss what the findings are. Get together with your team. Could be done in a pair of two, could be done in a pair of, I don't know, a group of 5, 10, 15 people, depending on how the trainer sees fit. And that being said, this is something for that particular skill, of course, is important to include, but also our partners for the other skills, whether it's decision-making or it's human resource related, personal development, personal management. That's something where it also comes in sometimes as a team working and sometimes individually working. So we didn't have like an average, but I would say that's very well balanced in general. And we see Kathy raising your hand. Shoot, shut up.
I just wanted to say thank you for providing this opportunity this morning. In the United States, the different regions have started to facilitate Winning Women conferences for the students, and my region is in the Northeast. And the two CEOs that are here on this call this morning are part of an all-girl school, a private school, and they are facilitating the first Winning Women conference for our region and offering it for middle school students that would be entering high school and hopefully will be interested in participating in VE. So I think that this has been very helpful for them as well as for all of us in helping to design their first conference. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that response. And the Winning Women conferences and that particular initiative that's been there for some time now, very successfully run in the US. That was one of the many great best practices and one of the ones that we looked at and we were quite, I would say, envious about in terms of
Yeah.
that, hey, we need this around the world. So that was one of the inspiration. It's wonderful having you here, and thank you for joining that session.
Thank you.
Any other questions, feedback, suggestions, criticism, constructive, please, but any feedback from our consortium members, anything that we forgot to say that we totally missed because we're so in our FEMPOWER bubble? I see a heart from Andrea, and I'll send it back to Austria. I think if we can say then there is no questions at the moment, we'll share again the presentation then in the follow-up. I think we can conclude then today. I would like to take a screenshot if that's okay for everybody. So I just want to make sure that everybody has brushed their hair and puts on a nice big smile. Wants to, of course, we're not forcing everybody, but that would be really lovely. So I would actually count down and then take a screenshot. So please put on your nicest or funniest smile, up to you. But this might be used then for dissemination. So 3, 2, 1. And I see a lot of open eyes and smiles, so that's very good. Okay. And then I would say, Vicky, do we have anything else to add?
No, just it's been such a wonderful atmosphere already just at this member session. This is one of the great things about this project, that it was a bit outside of just the practice enterprise. So we were able to speak to different stakeholders and meet different really interesting people and introduce them to the practice enterprise concept by that. And it's just been really lovely. And I'm kind of sad that it's ending now, although of course you're happy that you got the work done, but it's just been really a pleasure to work together with the partners. We bought some giveaways, so we will send you some branded FEMPOWER stuff. And I wish I could give this giveaway to all of you who are on here today, but unfortunately just virtually. But it's been a big pleasure to have you all on here today. And yeah, we will send you the follow-up notes, we will send you the slides, and we will send you, of course, any other resources that would be relevant and helpful. So if you have any questions at any point, we'll be happy to answer those. And thank you so much for being on here today.
So big thank you, especially to the consortium and everybody here. And then have a lovely rest of the day, start of the day in the US, rest of the day in Europe, and we hope to see you soon in person.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.